Hey, good to see you. I'm Brian Burke, and this is Module 1. And today I'm going to be talking about um, the sort of the big picture of uh, what you've been taught about women and about yourself, and then I'm going to try to re-educate you. So this is sort of a re-education video where I point out all the conditioning that you've amassed over the years, all your cultural conditioning, sort of the box that you've been born into. I'm going to show you the box so that you can step out of the box. And then I'm going to lay a foundation moving forward using the ACT leadership system. Now, leadership might sound like a strange word when we're talking about women, sex, dating. You might be used to hearing terms like seduction, pickup, game, getting laid, and of course, impressing women, being confident, just being yourself, all these ideas that you've been told you're supposed to do with women. They're not just misnomers, they're actually extremely dysfunctional because they your focus on their are inconducive to your goal, which is to connect with the woman emotionally and physically. So that's why I don't use those terms, and instead I use terms like leadership. Well, that is the term that I use, is leadership. And if we're looking at this ACT Leadership Quick Guide, if you have that up, it's a leadership. Now, friendship is another strange word, right? Because we always hear the word friend zone, and that's like a bad thing. You don't want to be in the friend zone. Or I've heard it said that men and women can't be friends because there's always a sexual, because the guy wants to have sex with the woman, and so that somehow prevents them from actually being friends. That undermines the potential friendship. Well, I actually believe it's the opposite, and I know this from personal experience, is that sex actually can strengthen a friendship. Having sex with a woman bond. It is our level of trust that we have with each other. We've also made each other feel really better basis for a friendship than just making each other feel good. I mean, with my guy friends, of course, we make each other feel good by cracking jokes and being supportive of each other, doing pleasurable activity like lifting weights or whatever, video games, what do with your guys, or just hanging out, having beers, whatever. It's you share feelings with each other. And it's the same with women. Only with women, there's an experience that you can have that's extremely pleasurable, which is sex, or I should just say physical, because there's a lot that encompasses. I mean a sexship. I mean you're friends with the woman. Now, I would say up until maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Up in point, most of the women I slept with, I wouldn't really say were friends. Once I became sexually active, and then up until I would say my 24, 25, I would sleep with a lot of women, but I wouldn't necessarily call them my friends. I wouldn't feel that way about them, except for a couple. Dating, but not really liking the girl that much, or not even being liking her as a person, just trying to get laid, right? Now, what's interesting about that, those women would consider me their friend, but I wasn't thinking about them that way. With women that I meet now, they're all, my focus is on, number one, leading us into friendship. I have a great analogy that I'll give you in a second, but I want to lead them into friendship. And every woman that I've really been close to and spent a significant amount of time with in the past maybe 7-8 years, I would genuinely call them my friends. And the proof is that they still care about me and want to be in touch with me and talk to me, even though a lot of them are married or have boyfriends or whatever, or live in different cities, different parts of the world, still want to know how I'm doing, still genuinely care about me, and vice versa. What I've found is that when I focus on leadership towards friendship, everything happens a lot easier. It's not work anymore. And a lot of times, when women try to test me or push my buttons or see what I can deal with, or try to see if I'm really the guy that I'm presenting myself at. And by the way, that's rare. That almost only happens when you, as a man, you do something that triggers triggers a red flag for her. She senses you're not really being yourself. So that almost never happens to me. But on the rare occasions it does happen, it's very easy to deal with them because the fundamental way to deal with a test or a woman sort of nudging you to see if you're for real is to act confused and to just refocus and focus on something that's more conducive to you and her connecting. So you almost like don't pay attention to it, or it's just not even on your radar. Now, you can try to fake that, but if you're really focused as a leader using the 5 focalities of leadership, which is I-PACE, which I'm going to teach you in a little bit, and your intention there is to become friends with the woman, you won't even see these tests. You won't even interpret them. It'll just be like, what? You'll just be confused. Like, what? Like, for example, I remember a woman, in this particular woman, her personality was very much like, I think she had a lot of distrust of men, so she was constantly just bombarding me with questions. And we were meeting for first date, and at first I couldn't really decide what I wanted. I was kind of thinking beer, but then I kind of wanted a cocktail. And it took me a second to decide, and then I think I decided on, vodka soda or something. And she said something like, "Are you always this indecisive?" By the way, this girl was really, really physically attractive, like beautiful. And yet she was constantly saying things like that. Now, a guy that is focused on game or trying to impress the woman or trying to seduce her might focus on saying, "Oh no, I'm usually very decisive," or he might talk about, "Well, I'm really decisive at work, I'm making 6 figures," or he might say something to try to impress her. As I recall, my response was I just looked at her like she had just said something in Chinese, like, "Huh?" and then said so. So that's the perfect test beater, if you want to call it that. But my was, I wasn't interested in competing with this woman or impressing her. Trying to impress the woman is basically competing with her. Game is trying to impress the woman. It's like you're saying, "Hey, let's play a game of pickup basketball." Instead of saying, "Hey, let's talk and get to know each other," when you start gaming, you're basically saying, "Step up on the court, let's go one-on-one." Now, what you're really competing with, though, is what you think her idea of an attractive man is. And you're competing with that guy, who, by the way, if he is real, he's only in her mind. But you don't even know if he is in her mind. So you've invented this man that you're supposed to be like, and you've projected him into her mind, imagining all this, by the way. None of it might be even real. There's two levels of unreality here. Well, 3, because the first level is you've made up this person based on ideas. 4 levels of reality, now that I think about it. These ideas you think, the ideas of what you think a man should be to attract women, to make women want to fuck you, basically. You've turned those ideas into this guy who's probably like a conglomeration of James Bond and guys you went to high school with and all kinds of messy shit. You've taken that guy who's your mind, who's based on an illusion, on misnomers, right? And then you've projected him into her mind, and now you're competing with him. So you made it all up. Does you absolutely no good. So, now you're competing with this guy. Now here's the thing. You're competing with this idea of a man in her mind. And she's definitely not picturing the guy that you imagined. You're trying to beat out this guy by impressing her, by trying to game her. You're competing with this imaginary dude. It's 4 levels of unreality. Complete illusion. An illusion of an illusion of an illusion of an illusion. Meanwhile, you're missing out on the opportunity to connect with a female soul. In our culture, there's a lot of cultures that don't do this, and you see a very different dynamic between men and women. But Our culture has taught men that women are the experts on men. That there's validity in a woman telling you how to be a man. And then if a woman tells you you're not a man, that somehow is valid, or that's something you should even pay attention to. That women are judges of men. We live in that culture. If you knew a guy that liked to give blowjob and enjoyed getting fucked in his ass and walked around in high heels and wore lipstick, would you take advice from him on how to be a man? I'm not talking about homophobia or being biased against homosexuals. I'm not even talking about homosexuality. I'm just saying a male who likes to take dick, would you, it's a funny thing to say, but would that be the guy you go to for instructions on how to live your life? And yet, women to be the judges of men. We look to a person who, if you got in a fight, would not have your back because they physically couldn't. We look to someone who can make a baby inside them, which is totally foreign to a male experience. We look at someone who likes a dick shoved in their mouth, in their vagina. That's a good feeling to them. That's your expert on how to be a man? No. That doesn't mean that there's no value in feedback that a woman can give you. And you should definitely listen to women, and I'm going to tell you how to listen to women and how to understand women. But your source of information and authority should come from you. Not even from other guys. From you. I absolutely do not give a shit. Even long-term girlfriend, even women that I'm in love with, that I'm even thinking of starting a family with, I don't give a fuck what she thinks of me as a man. Now, if she has some feedback on me as a human being, if she says, you keep talking about wanting to get in shape, but then we go to the grocery store and you buy bullshit, you buy Doritos or whatever. Okay, I can listen to that. But if a woman says something like, and this is a common things that women will say, well, you're afraid of commitment. A guy who doesn't want to necessarily settle down and be with one woman, women will all say, oh, he's immature. He's still a boy. He's afraid of commitment. No, he just likes new pussy. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's why the human race is still here. The human race dwindled, they think, to about 30,000 people worldwide around the end of the last ice age. There was a big catastrophe that ended the ice age. And with all this environmental natural, food, resources became very scarce, had to move around. The human race hit a bottleneck. And they think that the reason why that, for example, women are essentially fertile, can get pregnant year-round, except for a couple days during their period. That's different from the rest of the animal kingdom, well, at least mammals. Mammals have estrus. Women don't. Humans don't. So and also men and women are wired to, women especially, and we're learning that now through real scientific research by women at the highest levels of research institutions, academia, etc., that women want variety just as much as men do. Humans are horny animals. The human penis proportionally is the biggest penis on a male or on a mammal. Out of all the animals in the mammal, whatever species or genus, whatever you call it. So, and they think the reason for that is female selection, pleasure, right? Your sex drive is good, but we've been trained to think that your sex drive is a bad thing. That men are dogs, right? That to want to fuck a woman is sleazy. Well, if you think about, let's say you're at Starbucks or wherever, and you see an attractive woman, well, she's in her yoga pants, great ass, nice curves, pretty face. Every guy in there is looking at her, but none of them talk to her. None of them actually interrupt her for the sexual intention. I'm going to talk about interrupting in a second. What essentially all these guys doing is they're acting gay. They're acting like they're either gay or even asexual. even though they're not. Because society has taught men that to be sexually interested in a woman is a bad thing. Underlying all that is the idea that women aren't sexual, and that's extremely, extremely dehumanizing and demeaning to women. To think that as a man approaching a woman with a sexual intention is somehow bad for her is actually dehumanizing to the woman. It undermines the fact that, hey, that woman might actually like sex. This attack on male sexuality is also an attack on women. It's an undermining of women's sexuality. And of course, there's a line where approaching a woman can become disrespectful. But there's absolutely nothing disrespectful about letting a woman know that she turns you on, that you like how she looks, and you are interested in fucking her if you guys get along. Of course, you wouldn't say that, and that's just because of our culture. Our culture says that it's disrespectful to go up to somebody and say, yeah, I would love to fuck you. Even though, where's the disrespect there? And then we can look at our culture, we can look at that are used in our culture. A great way to understand culture is to look at the lexicon. What's the worst insult you can say to somebody? Fuck you. But it could just as well be the best compliment you could give somebody. I'm trying to box we're in. And I'm trying to point out that number one, it's just a box. And by showing you these different words and these different dynamics in our culture, I'm trying to point out the dimensions of the box in a way, the sort of the psychological boundaries that you've been put in. And it's understand accept them because you got everyone telling you that this is right. Now, when I mentioned interrupting, give you an analogy. I call it the sandbox analogy. When I was younger, well, actually, my whole life up until my early 20s, I had severe social anxiety. And when I was a little kid, instead of just kind of keeping to myself and being quiet, a lot of times I would lash out and act angry. I guess I did that when I was a teenager too. I got in a lot of fights when I was a teenager. But when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old, I would play in a sandbox. There was a sandbox in our apartment complex. And I would bring my G.I. Joes out there. I was really into G.I. Joes, and I would play with the G.I. Joes, and I would set up like forts. I was really into like setting up like a fort for my guys. So, I would make like mud huts and just try to create this little world. Anyway, I would get really into it, and I would be playing with my G.I. Joes in the sandbox, and of course, other little kids would want to come in and join me, and they would want to play in the sandbox as well. There's only one sandbox, right? So a lot of times when little kids would come in or try to be too close to me, I remember sticking like shaking it at them and just getting really angry. I was really weird kid. So I had my defenses up. And I remember on one occasion, a kid came up, and instead of, intruding on my space, it wasn't my space, but instead of getting too close to me or trying to grab one of my G.I. Joes and play with them himself, he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And at first I was, kind of nervous. I was like, "Oh, I'm making a fort," It's like, "Oh, that's cool. What if you made a wall here? Oh, you know what you can do? You can wet the sand and make it mud so that it stays up more. And let me go get you some sticks so we can make like a roof." And so he was like helping me but not intruding, right? And after a few minutes, he was sitting next to me in the sandbox, and we were making this like whole little military base together for my G.I. Joes. And he became my friend. So who was the leader there? He was a leader, and he was leading us into friendship. And it's very similar to what you're doing with women. Now this kid didn't want to steal my Joes. He might have just wanted to play with my G.I. Joes. He might have thought they were cool. See, we wanted to play with the G.I. Joes. He didn't want to steal them though. And he knew that if we worked together, we could make an even better fort. So that's what you're doing with women. And you are interrupting, but you have a good intention. Part of that intention is to make her feel good emotionally, but also physically. and to make yourself feel good. And there's nothing wrong with you feeling good. Her body is designed for ultimate pleasure for you, and vice versa. Men think that when they approach a woman with a sexual intention, that they're actually doing something bad. And the reason why is because we are conditioned since the start of the Abrahamic religions, which is really just propaganda. It's mind control to keep men and women from connecting with each other, with themselves, and with being. And when I say being, I mean God. The word being in the original Greek translation of the Bible from Aramaic to Greek, the Greek word for God translates to being, B-E-I-N-G. If you substitute God with being throughout the Bible, completely changes the meaning. Now, I'm not separate from God. Now, I don't need a priest as a middleman that I need to give money to or tithings to or I need to confess to in order to talk to God. I don't need to hope that God is there. It's being, and I'm a human being. I'm part of all of it. I'm connected to the world, to the universe, and to consciousness. I'm a small mind as an individual, an illusory individuation of big mind. Okay, and so when we just change the word, it changes everything, right? So what a lot of religion, especially the Abrahamic religions, their true intent was to keep people in line and control human behavior, to keep people easily managed, to keep the population manageable. So part of that propaganda, that mind control, was this idea that women are either a Madonna or a whore, that a woman is, that purity, a woman's purity equals how many times she's had sex, whether she's had sex at all. Why isn't purity about the purity of her intention? Why isn't purity about her wanting to help and care about other people and not hurt others? No. Her purity is how many penises have been inside of her. It's so fucking ridiculous when you think about it. In my opinion, it is the plague of humanity, and it's still going to some degree. Now, here's so what I'm trying to do is why you feel guilt when you approach a woman. Your guilt is, number one, you've been told that sex is bad for women. Number two, you've been told to use words that are congruent to that paradigm, which is, seduction, to get her to do something bad with you, even though she shouldn't do it. That's why a lot of guys will have sort of that shit-eating grin when they talk to a woman, when they approach her. It's sort of like, hey, can I buy you a drink? Hey, what's up? How's it going? It's almost like, it's like a little kid when he's trying to steal something or he's trying to get away with something. He's like trying to reach his hand in the cookie jar and looking at you with a little smirk, like, well, hey, is it okay if I steal this cookie? That's what it feels like as a man when you're trying to talk to a woman with a sexual intention. You feel like you're trying to steal something out the cookie jar while the person's watching you. You got this guilty grin on your face. If you approach her at all. Most guys just chicken out and pretend to be gay. And then they'll make excuses pretending that they're a good guy. Oh, well, she probably has a boyfriend, or she's busy, or I don't want to interrupt her, or I'm not sleazy, or I'm not like these sleazy pickup artist player types. No, you're just a pussy. You're just afraid. And you've allowed yourself to believe that sex is bad for women. Adding another layer, another cloak on top of the truth is that women are also conditioned to believe that sex is bad for them. So how many times have you heard a woman, when things are heating up, you're on your couch or in your bed or something, she's like, I'm a good girl, or I'm not easy, or they want to convince you that they're not easy, that they're a good girl, or I'm being good today, or we can't, I don't want to do anything bad. This good bad thing. These poor women are just like in this schizophrenic state about sex. They want to have sex, but if they do that, on top of that, that's been proven by other men. So just looking back in high school, when a girl would be a guy or dating a guy, and then maybe she'd give him a blowjob, or he'd finger her, or they'd have sex or whatever. Just small stuff, like not even like, she's not getting gangbanged by a bunch of dudes or anything like that. She's just maybe messing around with the guy. The next day, oh, Rachel's a whore, I heard she sucked so-and-so's dick, well. And then, of course, she's ostracized and she gets. Think about how horrific that is. She liked this guy, wanted to do something physical that felt good, that she wanted to do, that felt good to both of them. And all of a sudden it makes her bad. It's crazy. A lot of times it's the guy that the woman really likes that when she lets go and indulges in some pleasurable activity, that's the very person that judges her and devalues her immediately after. The guy that she wanted to like her, that she cared about and was interested in, that's the very person that now says she's a whore. Fucked up. Creates an ambivalence where on the one hand she wants it, and she's afraid of the social repercussions, of the interpersonal repercussions. She's afraid of that guy actually losing interest if she does do something physical with him. Not to mention the actual physical risks, which even though we use birth control, condoms, etc., there's still the biological concern of, okay, if I do this, if I have sex with this guy, I could get pregnant. There's a biological risk there. The human body doesn't understand condoms. The human body understands penetration. 9 months later, a baby comes out. I'll give you another analogy, the pizza analogy. So the pizza analogy is, we all like pizza. So imagine, your whole life, you love pizza. It's delicious. It's your favorite food. Every time you smell it, you get super hungry. Now imagine that everywhere you go, there's just pizza restaurants. Every other store is a pizza place. However, since day one, since birth, you've been taught that if you eat pizza, you're bad. And the person who sold you the pizza will think less of you. All your friends and family will think less of you. And if you eat enough pizza, everyone might start calling you a whore and not want to have any sort of connection with you at all. And the more pizza you eat, the less value you have as a human being, the more dirty you are. As you're walking down the street, you're smelling pizza, you're getting hungry as hell, it would be too difficult for you to admit to yourself that you loved pizza and that you wish you could eat it, meanwhile not being able to do it. What you would do is, number one, convince yourself that you didn't like pizza, that you were a good girl who didn't eat pizza, and every now and then when you couldn't stand it, you would sneak a piece of pizza. But you'd have to make sure no one was watching, right? The guy who sold you the pizza man, like some Italian dude with a mustache. But you'd have to make sure that you could pizza guy, that he wasn't going to judge you, he wasn't going to tell anybody, and that he genuinely cared about you enough to make sure that no one knew you were eating the pizza. And if he did give you the pizza, he wasn't going to then look down on you. He would give you more pizza. So obviously the pizza is a metaphor not just sex, well, not just the physical aspect of sex, but the emotional aspect of sex as well. Pizza is physical intimacy with a man. So that's the predicament women are dealing with. The idea of sex being bad. My advice for you to get really comfortable with sex and see sex as something good. My sexual program, the 3 videos really focus on that, on helping a man understand how to be very comfortable, and not just comfortable with his sexuality, but to enjoy it, to love it, to want to express it without guilt, and how to do that in a way that calibrates to women's ambivalence about sex because of their conditioning as well, and leads a woman out of that sense of guilt into a realm of freedom and authentic, passionate expression. But it's still fun to play, even though you can be sex positive and be like, yeah, sex is great, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to fuck a woman. And even bringing the woman to that level where she's like, hey, I love to get fucked, this is great. There's still an element that we can play with where sex is bad or naughty. Naughty is a great word. Women use naughty a lot because it's like, if sex is too acceptable, it kind of loses the fun, doesn't it? If you look up Alan Watson's sexuality, I think, something about sex and sexuality. But what he talks about is how, on the big picture, humans like to dance and play and create games for themselves. And one game we've created is the sex game, where we want to have it, but we create a barrier or a challenge for ourselves so that by breaking through that barrier, that challenge, it's more enjoyable. So if sex was just so totally open, we were just having orgies in the streets, it wouldn't be as fun. It would sort of lose its appeal or its excitement. There wouldn't be a feeling of the soul breaking through in the physical manifestation of the human form. So we create where sex is bad. If you're playing battle, it's not as fun if there's no other team trying to stop you. As soon as you have an opponent, now we're playing a game. Now there's some challenge. Now the human experience of breaking through barriers is possible now. So big picture, that's going on a spiritual level, but you can play with in the bad. A lot of women have fantasy of having sex in a public place, and that's because it's forbidden. It's bad. You want to be sex positive. You want to be comfortable with sex, but at the same time, you can play with the concept of naughty. I'm going to teach sexual with women how to make jokes and flirt in a sexual about sexual topics in a more sincere, kind of serious way. But what's going to happen a lot of times is the woman will say, "Oh, you're bad," or "Wow, you're really forward, you're really sexual," or I've even had women say, "What makes you think you can be that sexual with me?" Or "I can't believe you just said that." I think there's two levels to what they're doing. Number one is trying to put up that front that they're good, but number two, what they're doing is they're creating this barrier that I have to break through, which allows them to feel my thrust. That's why I think partially why women don't approach men and why women will wait for you to approach them is because it's almost like a screen. It's a test. Number one, if a woman approaches a man, she looks to the man and to anyone watching. A woman wants to feel your masculine penetration. It's one of the parts of ACT. The T in ACT is thrust. A woman wants to feel that. She wants to feel your hard-on for life and for her. Women want to see which man will up and make a move, which man's going to be proactive. She wants to see which man desires her so much that he doesn't care about whether or not people are watching or whether or not he's interrupting her. I've had my most success with the women that turn me on the most, which is sort of the opposite of most guys. Most guys struggle with the women they want the most, but for me, after I sorted some things out, I actually struggle with women that don't turn me on. It's the women that do turn me on a lot that I'm most successful with, and the reason for that is because there's a huge amount of desire and sexual passion coming through, and I'm interrupting her, but the whole time I got a smile on my face and a look in my eyes like I want to bend her over right now. However, I'm able to balance with being respectful, not crossing the line too much. I crossed the line a little bit, but not too much. And I don't ask her to agree with it. I don't care if she wants to call me naughty or dirty or pretend she's not interested. I don't care. And part of that is because I don't look to women as the authority on my masculinity. So I really don't care what she thinks of me. So whereas most guys will see a beautiful woman and he'll start competing, dude, this is in her mind, competing with that guy for her approval. I don't do that. Her approval is not even part of the program. All I want to do is show her my heart-on for her, emotionally and physically. I want to show her how much she turns me on. Part of that is exploring about her, learn what makes her tick. You can take a woman and know nothing about her and just see her body and say, yeah, okay, and you can fuck her, and that might be. I mean, prostitute, for example, you pay her to sort of not talk, right? You pay her to leave, isn't that what they say? So you're basically to not have to get to know her. And I've had sex with prostitutes, really beautiful women who are prostitutes. I've done it just because I was in Mexico and fuck it, why not? You take like the hottest women I've seen in my life, the hottest women I've dated. These women were right there, at that level. But I didn't really enjoy the sex that much. It was cool. I got off. It was fun little 20, 30 minutes, right? But it wasn't even close to a woman who is that physically beautiful, but also I know her sense of humor. And I know her reactions when I tease her or tickle her. I know the things that she cares about. I know what she's good at, and I know that she does this funny little dance when she's hungry. You know, that's to fuck her is so much more enjoyable. And by the way, if you're interested, I absolutely encourage you have fun little flings. One of my favorite things, take a woman outside from the bar and job. I love doing that. That was just a fun thing that I would do all the fucking time. Even in those situations where we're in 15, 20 minutes and then we're messing around outside, still was really focused on her and trying to learn, like trying to pick up all her idiosyncrasies and all the funny ways she makes the way she moves her eyes when she's thinking, and the way she dances, and the way she holds her drink, the way her tonality changes, her voice itself, really every woman has a different sort of melody when they talk. I really am trying to explore and learn about this woman in front of me, because every woman has a unique dance or flavor or color of the universal feminine. So when you can see the universal feminine, that is the energy that is animating her unique dance, she becomes much beautiful and and what she thinks of you, there's no room for that in your mind. All you can think about is what you think of her and how much she's turning you on. I'm there. I even talk to the woman. I'm there. Even if it's a 5-minute quick hookup behind the bar or something like that, I'm still very, very much focused on who she is as a human being. And women can feel that. I've talked about seeing the woman, seeing the feminine. That is awareness. So having awareness of the woman. You maybe heard the term situational awareness, which is like a military term. Situational awareness means knowing what's around you, knowing all the dynamics, the things that are going on. And as much awareness as you can have about the situation, the better. You know how far away the enemy is. You know what's in between you and them. Maybe there's a river. You know what the weather's like. You know how many people you have, where they're set up. You just have as much awareness of the situation as possible. Well, you want to have that with women, but a lot of times, again, men don't know how to do that. Men aren't even trying to understand the woman. They're trying to say this thing that's going to impress her more than Mr. Right in her mind, that you, by the way, you made up and created. I talked about thrust. As a man, your masculine expression, you're going to have unique dance, unique flavor, your unique style as a man. You don't need to tell you how to be a man. You know. It's looking to others for guidance on how to be a man that actually gets in the way of that. For example, what my favorite comedian is Bill Burr. I think he's hilarious, and I think he's a genius social commentator. And he's, I listen to his podcast, and he just recently got into baking. Now, Bill Burr is actually a very masculine guy in the way he thinks, the way he expresses himself. He grew up in Boston, and there's sort of this machismo that he grew up with where, baking is gay, or, you're a sissy if you're baking. But he really enjoys baking. And so he fucking bakes, and he's probably really good at it now. And that... The association of baking to being gay or to being feminine is completely arbitrary. It's completely cultural. It has no grounding in real reality. But he's masculine enough to say, you know what, fuck you, I like to bake. So baking is part of his dance now. I'm just trying to illustrate how your unique expression is going to be masculine, but it can only be yours. You can't, as long as you're trying to emulate another man, you will be holding yourself back. What women are wired to be turned on by is masculinity expressed in a unique new way. So just like men, we like novelty. You don't want to, let's say you have your pick of 20 women that you can sleep with this month. Well, you don't want them all to look the same. In the same way with women, now that we're talking about their bodies now. Well, for women, it's more your mind is what they're interested in. How your mind is expressed through your behavior. Well, a woman doesn't want 20 guys that are going to be the same. Trying to compete this imaginary guy and be at being him than he is. This conglomeration of James Bond and Tony that you grew up with in high school, and some Brad Pitt or whatever. You're trying to be better at being that dude than he is, which is number one, impossible. Number two, he doesn't exist. Number three, that's not even what women want. So thrust is about being your unique version of the universal masculine. So we have awareness, we have thrust, we have now between A and T is C, and that's control. Why control? The initial sexual process for a woman is a process of giving up control, of surrender. Actually, submission, you've heard it said that women are more submissive than men. Submission is actually a misnomer. That's not what's actually going on. Submission is when you use force to control someone's behavior. But true control can only be given. If you think about a slave being shackled, well, physically they might be controlled. They've been forced into submission, but mentally they're still free. They don't want to be there. They don't want the shackles. So you don't really control them. Control can only be given. When control is given, that's called surrender. And we surrender all the time. When you vote for a politician and accept their policies, that's surrender. The reasons why we vote for people is the same reason why a woman would give up control to a man. The fact that a woman is being penetrated and that you're physically stronger, faster, and you're the one who penetrates her means that she is giving up control. That's how it feels to her. She's surrendering to you. Why does someone surrender? There's three receptive states. I call these the three gates of control. And a gate is opening. Okay, so there's a metaphorical level to it. The three reasons give up control, why we surrender, why we become receptive. The three receptive states or emotions are respect, safety, and anticipation. So when you respect someone, you feel safe with them, and you feel like in the future there's some sort of reward, there's some sort of pleasure coming, you will give control to that person. With politicians, they wear suit, tie, power tie, never a goofy tie. Even if they're doing something casual, it's got this formal aspect to it. They're trying to show that their background is full, has integrity and that they've always made the right decisions and blah blah blah. And of course, the media and the other party is trying to dredge up dirt on them and all that. Whether or not a politician has done drugs in the past, Bill Clinton with marijuana, I think he handled that wrong. He said that he smoked but he didn't inhale. You just say, yeah, I smoked weed. Well, George W. Bush handled it perfectly. I don't even know if he addressed it or he might have admitted that he had done cocaine or whatever. And then with Obama, it was like, yeah, I did weed and cocaine when I was younger. Who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? And then move on. The fact that that was even an issue was the respect thing. Now, the funny thing is, with Bill Clinton, he fucked up respect because he lied. No one smokes weed and doesn't inhale. It's a lie. We might lose respect for a guy who used to do cocaine and smoke weed, but he garners even more respect from us when he openly admits it and says, yeah, so what? I'm not like that anymore. So there's multiple levels to this, different frames. The frame can be bigger and bigger and bigger. And then safety. Safety is where the person feels safe with you. Name me a option that's not tough on crime, right? We had multiple elections that were won of our fear of terrorists. 9/11 turned our political discourse into, who was better at getting the terrorists. And George W., even though he's probably the worst president of our time, politics aside, just the way he managed shit and got us into wars and put us in debt and fucked up the housing situation. Guy was awful. And somehow we did him because he wanted to take the war to the terrorists, right? The war on terror, right? Tough. He had the thing with Mission Accomplished where he's in the military suit looking like an idiot. I think Obama probably got reelected in a big part because he killed Osama bin Laden. It was huge. And the timing of that was kind of convenient, right? At that level, almost everything is planned. But the point I'm trying to illustrate, how important safety is to our decision making when it comes to giving up control to somebody. And then anticipation of pleasure. Job. You're going to create new jobs, right? Tax benefits, taxes, jobs, whatever. So it's like, okay, if I like this guy, if I give control to this person, I'm going to get something. I'm going to get some goodies in return. For a woman, the anticipated pleasure is initially it's sex. It is. The woman has to sense that you're going to fuck her properly when you guys get along. Women are thinking that. They're thinking, okay, is this guy gonna make a move? Is he old enough to take my clothes off? I even heard a guy, Jeffy from RSD, and he had a great little talk, it's online, where he says women know meet him and his buddies that they get alone with him. He's like, women know that when they meet me, if we get alone, like, this guy's taking his dick out, I'm taking my dick out, right? It sounds funny, but there's a lot of wisdom in that. There's something to that, where women can get the sense that, yeah, this guy, his dick works and he's going to know how to use it on me, and he's not going to be afraid to do so. There's a lot to that. So that's that anticipation. Safety. There's a physical safety element. Okay, he's not going to try to rape me, or he's not going to hurt me or get weird on me if we get alone. But also there's the element of emotional safety. Can she express her sexuality and not be judged for it? A lot of times women will hook up with guys that they know in their social circle, that they know have hooked up with a lot of other women in their social circle and have kept their mouth shut. And the women will know, okay, he's a guy I can fuck, and he's not going to talk about it. And he's not going to judge me for it. I have a buddy like that I grew up with that's, I mean, at this point, he lives in a smaller city, and he knows a ton of women. He just knows a lot of people. He goes out a lot and stuff, a very social person. And, he got started probably when he was in middle school with women, with girls, and it just has snowballed. And now he's just going on his reputation as that guy that a girl can hook up with, have great, fun, sort of kinky sex with, and he's not going to talk, he's not going to tell anybody, and he's definitely not going to judge her for it. So that there's a big aspect of emotional safety when it comes to being sexual with a guy. And then respect. A lot of the that women give guys is because they don't respect him. They feel like, and the one thing that just kills respect, and I kind of touched on this with the Bill Clinton marijuana thing, is lying, is being insincere, is being inauthentic. And when a man lies to a woman, it's fucking disgusting. It's repulsive to them. Now, it's one thing if I'm lying to, let's say I said something bad about a guy, I said, oh, this guy, he's a pussy, I don't like him. And he's bigger and stronger than me, right? And he finds out, and he comes up and he's like, hey man, I heard you were talking shit. Oh, no, I wasn't talking shit. And that's kind of understandable. You don't want to get your ass beat. Shouldn't have been saying anything in the first place, and it's very respectable and honorable if you say, yeah, I was. And knowing you're probably going to get your ass beat, but still stepping up and saying, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's fight. But it's understandable if you don't, right? Well, what can a woman do to you? Hold out on sex. So when a man lies to get sex, it's just despicable. There's just no respect there. Because, first of all, he thinks he needs to lie to make a woman be sexual, again, undermining a woman's inherent sexuality. Number two, he's that desperate for sex that he needs to lie. And number three, she can't really do anything to him. And to think that his life is incomplete unless he's getting laid is, again, so it's just not something that garners respect. It garners disrespect. It's like, ugh. It's repulsive. So, not being true to yourself, not being yourself is the biggest turnoff to a woman. Being yourself is the biggest turn-on. So that old advice of being yourself is true. The problem is you've been conditioned to be anything but yourself. You've been conditioned to try to compete with the dude, right, Mr. Suave, who isn't real. You've been conditioned to try to be him more than he is. So you've been conditioned to act like him perfectly. He's not real, so acting like him, even if you get it right, is a lie. It's almost to do that, but you're going to try. So in doing so, you're not going to be acting like who you really are. And ultimately that comes down to thrust, which is, who am I? What do I want? What do I value? What are my rules in life? That's the direction you want to go in. Now, what does that mean? How do I act? What do I say? What decisions do I make moment to moment? And then based on those decisions and the decision-making process I have, now, how does that come out in my clothes and the way I move my arms, the way I talk? With thrust, you have direction, focus, or focality, which is, I'm going to teach you that, that's the I-PACE stuff, and messaging. Messaging is what the world sees. And we communicate through messages, not through words, not through physical movements, but the whole message. An example of this is if I look at you and I look at you with a shitty look on my face like I don't like you, and I say, hey, how's it going? And then I look away real quick, like I don't care about your answer. The message is, I don't like you. If I look at you and I say, hey, how you doing? And I seem really interested in how you're doing, I have a positive look on my face, maybe I touch you on your arm at the same time, the message is, I like you, I'm curious about you, I want to build a connection with you. So the message is what's most important. And that starts with your direction, which we'll work on, which is basically experience, values, and rules. So the experience you want to have, the values required to have that experience, and then the rules undermining those values. So I call that EVR. Localities are where you put your attention moment to moment. There's only 6, but one of those 6 is bad, and it's called deception. In other words, the one thing that turns women off the most, which is not being real, not having integrity, not being honest or authentic in how you carry yourself and things you say. And that comes from you competing with the dude in her mind that you think is in her mind, which is really not. So deception. But there's only 6, right? So if we add one, we're left with all the good ones. The focalities are protection, appreciation, conditional appreciation, or you could say appreciation potential, curiosity, and expression. Now, if you look in the I-PACE conversation examples, you'll see examples of conversations where every time I talk, I'm in one of the 5 good focalities, and you can see it because there's a letter next to it. So there will be an A or a P. Right? That'll make sense when you look at it. So EVR stands for experience, values, and rules, and we're going to work backwards. So I want you to picture yourself at having a peak experience, or like a perfect experience a year from now. We're in the context of women dating, so I want you to imagine being in a situation, being somewhere, and you look at yourself and you say, yep, I made it. This is what I wanted. This is where I'm at. So you could be laying in bed with a woman, you could be walking with a woman, you could be having sex with a woman, you could be doing something, or you could be by yourself, just kind of maybe after you hung out with a woman that's in your life. I want you to imagine not just your goals, but you're actually a year from now, sitting there, standing there, doing something, and you look at yourself and you say, oh, I'm here. This is what I wanted. I want you to describe that in detail. What do you feel? What just happened? What's going to happen next? That's your experience. I want you to words and say, what values does that guy, does that future me, what values does he have? And I want you to pick 3. Given those three, what are your rules for life? So you're going to have at least 3, right? So you're going to have a rule for each value. But you can have more if you want. But I want you to come up with like your own list of commandments. And try not to go over 10, but try to do at least 3. Okay? Those are your rules. Now, we're going to just keep that in mind moving forward. And the next step is I'm going to teach you the focalities, and I'm going to teach you about the 3 dimensions of embrace. So the 3 dimensions of embrace and then time comprise awareness. Okay, you're going to use those as like your guidance system to build awareness of each woman. The focalities are going to be required to do that. You're going to need to know how to look in the right way.